When I was listening to Jake in that comment, and I'm looking at what's going on in Venezuela, first of all, you have to start looking at the reasons why it might happen. And when you're looking at the reasons the administration is using, the reasons that they're using simply like, these are, drug runners. We're stopping, this amazingly awful, drug running into the United States. There's a lot of countries that are a lot worse. And when you're looking at China, and I'm just going over what Jake said and what you talked about at the beginning, Joe, when you're looking at China and you're looking at Belt and Road, there's some countries that they have much more, I would say, penetration into. When you're looking at Argentina, Peru, Panama, right? And I was there in 2019, 2020 on a congressional delegation looking at Belt and Road challenges for trade there. So I'm pretty familiar with South America, probably too familiar. I'm very familiar with South America. So when you're looking at this blood for oil, the only thing when you start looking at the reasons that this is oil-based, because they are not the primary threat when it comes to drug trafficking in any way. I would say they're not even a secondary threat. So that's the first thing. And when you're looking at Venezuela, I don't know if people look at the geography of Venezuela. When you're looking at drugs coming into America, you're looking at Mexico, and you're looking at other northern South American countries that are much more capable and much more dangerous when it comes to that. So I have to say that that's the fact. Now, the one thing I would disagree with is sleepwalking.
Okay.
I think there's a difference between sleepwalking and incompetence. I don't think that this administration is sleepwalking at all into this conflict. I think that they're being driven by personal incentives, but also by donors, but also by certain other things that we might not be seeing that really come down to business decisions and using the military to enforce those business decisions. And I think what you've seen from the administration so far, I think would back that up. As just an educated opinion without all the facts and what's going on behind the door in the White House.
Interesting. So what are we positioning for when you hear about the assets that we sent down just this week? The Wall Street Journal was the first to report 10 V-22 Osprey tilt-rotor aircraft. You've got a C-17 cargo plane from Fort Stewart, Fort Campbell. And you know the units that are at Fort Campbell, Fort Stewart. We're talking about the 101st Airborne Division, the 75th Ranger Regiment. Why would you send them down there?
Well, either you're saber rattling, right, chest thumping. It's a threat to get to negotiations, or you're looking at specific incursions. And, President Trump isn't real great at keeping classified data, right? He's publicly announced CIA involvement, which mind-bogglingly, incredibly, I would say, ignorant to do. But I think that we're definitely saber rattling, but doing mission planning. If I'm looking at C-17s rolling in, I'm looking at some of those specific units that you talked about rolling in there with V-22s. Also, when you're looking at any type of carrier groups, but you're also looking at, we have amazing reach when it comes to even our bomber patterns out of the United States, in our bases, even fighters coming out of specific areas. So really what it comes down to, buddy, it looks like it's a mission plan, right? A joint mission plan that they're trying to execute right now. And I used to do this. I mission planned, as you know, that's my background, is mission planning multiple assets to go after targets, mostly terrorists or ground forces, using air power. So my guess is, buddy, is that this is a joint mission planning effort, either saber rattling, but I do think they're probably pretty serious on some ground incursion at some level into Venezuela.
Wow, that's really something. Potentially a deterrent, as you mentioned, but there's a purpose here. You mentioned the president confirming reports of a covert CIA operation on the ground in Venezuela. What are they doing? Are they mapping targets? Are they doing advance work for an invasion, or are they trying to prevent one?
Well, goodness, now these are interesting questions right there. So again, an easy Christmas interview, Joe, I tell you. I think, I don't want to guess what the CIA is doing. I probably can, but I think there's a few things that you look at. I think there's a few things that you can look at generally when you're looking at intelligence preparation of the battlefield, called IPB, or intelligence preparation of the battle space. They might have a new acronym for that. But what you're looking at is order of battle. You're looking at other sorts of things, right? Order of battle being what their position of their forces are, what they have on the ground, what their geolocations are, and I'm sorry, let's use another word, where they're actually located so we can get to them. But there's some other things I think they're possibly doing, especially when you're looking at, money. A lot of money, I don't think people know this. When you're going into another country and you're first in, there's a lot of money that transacts from contractors and things like that for foodstuffs and things of that nature, but also other things. So, I think that's all I'm going to talk about. But my guess is there's a lot of things going on just besides the CIA.
Okay, so you do know. Now I'm starting to understand. All right, by the way, this is kind of like a Trump cognitive test. The questions get harder as you go, Denver. So let's talk about the Epstein files. That's sort of a joke, but I am going to invoke the Epstein files.
It's actually.
When lawmakers come back from Washington, Republicans have got a lot of stuff to deal with. It's not just the president here. There's massive rifts within the party, and you used to serve with a lot of these same individuals when it comes to, yes, the Epstein files, when it comes to war powers, the story that we're talking about with regard to Venezuela, when it comes to health care. And there's a thought that this could all collide when lawmakers return into yet another government shutdown. What does Speaker Johnson do? What does the House Republican leadership do to keep that from happening?
Speaker Johnson's in an impossible situation. He has to do things that are unethical. So what you're talking about is he has to listen to the president and try to, maneuver through maybe even, you talk about sleepwalking into another government shutdown, right, Joe? We have that too. Mm-hmm. And when you look at the Epstein files, right, the Epstein files, when you look at Venezuela and things of that nature, they're just distractions from the Epstein files. But I think that what you're having happen in MAGA right now, what he has to try to fight is the sepsis that's seeping into MAGA. And I think there's three things that have happened where we are getting the first real indications that MAGA is not only in trouble, it might be in a flat spin. I think the first thing is the Epstein files. I think when you see the releases, not only how much Trump, the fact that he's in there so many times, so they try to redact it out, and the incompetence of the DOJ with the redactions, where you can do a copy paste and look at the redactions. For me, I'm just shaking my head like, how could you be more incompetent? And the stuff they forgot to redact, and then they had to retract. It's if we can't redact, retract. Yeah, I think that's the new statement, right? So I think that's the one thing that's seeping in because when you're looking at MAGA, you also have that QAnon bent where that hatred of pedophiles, even with conspiracy theories, they're already aligned not to trust deep state or globalists with these massive pedophile rings, and it looks like Trump's part of it. So that's sepsis. That's the first part of the infection. Whoa. I think the second part of the infection that Mike Johnson has to worry about is healthcare and the economy. Mm-hmm. And I think when you're looking at rates going up through the roof for healthcare, you have another piece of infection, that's setting in. But the third thing I think that really finalizes the complete infection of MAGA is war. And, MAGA is inherently nationalist. So when you have these three things, the Epstein files, healthcare, Medicaid, you're talking about the economy, people not being taken care of, and you have proactive war without the ability to really rationalize it in any cogent way. And you're already seeing what the Trump administration has done to enrich his family, but those around him. I think that sepsis, that boil has popped, and I think it's starting to pus a little bit. And I think that's the issue that Mike Johnson's going to have to fight with in Congress.
Wow. Yeah. Light holiday fare is how we build.
Hello, Merry Christmas.
I'm glad that we're making good on it, Denver. All right. So what do you got? 2 minutes left or something like that. What's your favorite Christmas movie? I'm serious. What do you watch when you sit down with your wife on Christmas Eve?
Everybody says Die Hard, but I think the best Christmas movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you want to be cool, but it's a Wonderful Life is the best. So people just need to to take it from me, right? Yeah, and I think because it actually has a message. There's there's the one they play every year. What is it? Oh gosh, I just forgot the name of the one that I watch every year that was made in 1983.
Scrooge.
A Wonderful Christmas.
Christmas
it was made in
Story?
83. A Christmas Story, obviously. Yeah, Christmas Story.
Great movie.
So there's that. So I think that's really a great movie. But, I am a little bit worried this Christmas, Joe, in these last 2 minutes. I just hope they let Santa Claus into our airspace. I don't know if he's a U.S. citizen.